Cold calls are phone calls from companies trying to sell you something. Even though they have no business with you previously, cold calls aren't usually illegal and don't necessarily count as a scam but they can be annoying, frustrating and even frightening. So, how this scam works? So, you receive a call out of the blue from something or someone claiming to be from like your relative or from like Windows or Microsoft, and they have detected a virus on your computer. To confirm the diagnosis, the caller asks you to open a Windows event viewer on your machine to check if it is infected. So several error messages are listed and this reinforces their claim. Even though errors are common, those errors are common and usually harmless. The callers then tell you these are the significant concern and offers to refer you to a technician who could fix the problem just free. So at this point you are offered a number of solutions that seems to make a perfect sense. Depending on the intent of a particular scammer involved, the technician that they might first install an antivirus on your computer. So typically the kind of that you download for free from a reputable companies and charge up to $250 for the service, and then ask you for your card details but installs nothing. Your details might then be sold to other parties or used for fraud purposes. Install malware on your computer. So this enables your computer to be controlled remotely for other illegal and harmful activities. Access and steal personal and financial details from your computer. Scammers have also been known to make a follow-up calls to the people who initially fell victim to the scam. So in this call, the scammer falsely claims to be from like foreign government, foreign law enforcement body or from your bank, and then they offer to recover the money that initially you lost in return for another fee. So some common types of the phone scam. So it can be hard to tell the difference between a scam and a cold calling. However, it is good to know some of these typical tricks that scammer use so that you can be prepared. So bank scam. Someone may calling from your bank telling you that there is a problem with your card or account. The caller will then often sound like professional and try to convince you that your card has been cloned and that your money is at risk. They might ask for your account and card details, including your PIN number, and even offer to send a courier to collect your card. They may also advise transferring your money to a safe account to protect it. This is a common scam and your bank would never ask you to do this. Computer repair scam. Then this is the most popular scam that people fall for. So the scammer may call you claiming to be from a help desk or a well-known IT firm such as Microsoft. They'll tell you that your computer has a virus and will ask you to download antivirus software, possibly at a cost. These turn out to be a spyware used to get your personal details. Legitimate IT companies don't contact customers this way. Compensation calls. This is a call from a company asking about car accident. You are supposedly has been claiming you may be entitled to compensation. Some of this could be genuine companies looking for businesses, but others are mostly scammers. Don't engage in those calls. If you had an accident, call your own insurance company on the phone number that provided on your policy. HMRC scam. You may get a call from something claiming to be HMRC saying that there is an issue with your tax refund or an unpaid tax bill. So they may leave a message and ask you to call back. Again, don't be fooled by this. HMRC would never contact you this way and never ask you to reveal personal or financial information such as your banking account details. Number spoofing. Scammers now have a technology to mimic an official telephone number. So it comes to your caller ID display. This, like if you have on your phone, this can trick you into thinking that caller is really from a legitimate organization such as like bank or utility company. So if you are in doubt, hang up and call the organization directly. If possible, call them from a different phone, as scammer can keep the phone line open, so that even if you hang up and call the organization directly, the line may still be contacted or connected to the scammer. If it's not possible to, then just use another phone to wait or at least 10 or 15 minutes before you call. And how to protect against these scams. So don't accept anything at face value. If it sounds unlikely or too good to be true, it probably is. Recognize the sign. If you are being pressured to act, disclose personal details, or send money to a stranger, it's almost certainly that it's a scam. For example, Microsoft never make those phone calls about its product. Never. Act quickly. Tell scammer to watch and stop in their tracks. Never respond. Just hang up or delete the SMS or email after just reporting, or don't ever interact with them at all. So you can find those common types in YouTube, like thousands and thousands of them. There's lots of video of them. Just go and check this out. And that's all about this cold call. The cold call virus scam. So this is a scam where an imposter pretending to be from Microsoft. So the cold calls, the victim usually just going through a list of phone calls. They could even have like obtained the phone book. So calling those people up and telling them that their computer has viruses, and the social engineer tells that as Microsoft they have been noticed about these viruses and that the victim has virus and they are helped to clear that virus. So these scams are originating from the subcontinent and they are mounted against Western countries. So when I have lived in Australia, so I also had some calls similar to this, and there are many others like in US, UK, and indeed Europe as a whole country. So outside of the jurisdiction where the scam is based, so as a result of that, they also became very difficult to shut down those, or they also follow a sort of process of I just outlined previous lecture, and they begin by social engineering and call up claiming that the victim has viruses. Then they go through a proof, and then what's going to look at. So as you can see in this page, this is from 2018. Also says the complaints are up 20% as horrible humans rake in readers. So as you can see that 153k complaint received and 50% of the complaints are cold or hard cash. So a tech support scam is typically where neither do well or call a user and claiming to be Microsoft and talk to the victim through a number of steps, as you can see here. Also they lose 20% of 2016 figures, as you can see here. They lose somewhere between $200 to $400. Also 183 countries run to the Microsoft uses there, as you can see, lots of money. Scammer able to get into their account. So on my Windows 10 they have some restriction or security, and it's better to keep updated your Windows. As you can see, I am using Windows 11. I always keep updated, so it's better for my security, because every patch the Microsoft release a patch every month, security patch. So that's for your security. It's better to keep updated your machine, so that they even try they will get blocked. So, and that's we're going to be talking about in this lecture. So followed represent how to fix this issue, and eventually monetization, asking for payment for the service they rendered. So all of this is a computer scam, so there is no service of any value that are actually provided. And indeed this is how we often see social engineering used to mount scams, certainly. And that's a consistent with many of the emails that we saw in our previous lecture that are simply scams, but it's a very repeatable scam. The penetrators have done this over and over and over again, and they are so used to this now that they can just talk, and they will talk like that, and you will get like, you will even give some money. They talk like this. So they use the same social engineering technique that we have been talking about already during our previous lectures, because the indiscriminate nature of this scam is they will call anyone, including me. As I said, I had multiple calls from scammers attempt to convince me that my PC was infected and they need to fix it, and then I need to pay them some money, and then just I laughed at them. So as you can see, you will receive a lot of calls. They will call a random number, but they even call engineer people like me or any other people who are in these related fields. So what you can do is you can just do a very simple computer cold call search in YouTube, and you can see lots of videos in here, and lots of, and all of these are related to cold call. So you can go and visit this out if you don't have any idea about how this cold call actually works. So go and check that out, and this will help you to get a broader knowledge about how these scammers usually do their talk and usually work inside your computer machine. So in this video I am going to demonstrate the authenticity. I will describe you a situation that most often the scammer, or like cold call viruses scam, they call you and tell you about your computer security problem, or any slowing down problem, and they will tell you what to do and where to go and what to see. So I will just demonstrate this part by using authenticity. So I have seen quite number of these cold call virus scam. I certainly have been on the receiving end couple of times, and they all follow the same process. So once they have the victim convinced that they have problems, they demonstrate the authenticity. So let me show you how that actually means. So first of all, the scammer will tell you that you have a problem on your computer, and they will try to show you the problem. So what they will do is they will ask you to go to the event viewer. So they will just search event viewer, and they will go to this page. So after social engineer actually doing, what will they do is they will load up this event viewer, and as you know, event viewer lots or captures a lots of information about the system, and the system is running, and lots of information on this event viewer, and also lots of warnings, and even inevitably there is also lots of problems or errors that will show on event viewer. And the thing about the event viewer is that there is a very large amount of information in the information bar or information viewer that can appear overwhelming and confusing to the victim when the scammer talked about this. So what they will do now is they will ask you to go to this security or application page. So they will, even though they have control over your machine, but they will not go themselves. They will ask you to go to yourself in this page, because they want you to see what's the problem in your machine so that you believe it yourself. So they will, as I told you, they will want me to take the control, and they will want me to see for myself that how this computer or my computer is infected. So everything up until here, like in event log. So before event log, the scammer will control everything, but when it comes to this part, they will ask you to control over this, because they want you to see and they want you to do it yourself. So think about this again from the perspective of authenticity. How can the social engineer convince the victim that they do indeed have a serious problem in your machine, which ultimately they will need the social engineering help. So what now they will ask you? They will ask you to scroll down. So as I already have faced this situation, that's why I am just demonstrating how this actually works or how they actually do it. So what they will ask you to scroll yourself and take control, not even though the scammer has the control over your machine, but they will ask you to scroll. So when you scroll, as you can see, there is a lot of information and also a lot of errors and also lots of warnings. Now as soon as there is a problem in here, he will take back control and he will guide through the process very carefully, and he will possibly be a little impatient. So evidently here that has done exactly this way by social engineering attack, because they have done it like thousands and hundreds of times, because they done it in regularly. That's why they are smooth about this process. Now when you see those learning, and you will think like, or maybe someone will think like, okay, my machine has a couple of problem or security, so they will try to convince you that your machine has problem. Now this page will load very slow when you are talking or you are connected to the scam, because scammer will do the other things on background. So that's why it will be slow, and that's when they will talk, and they will tell you that your machine is very slow because your machine has some problem or errors or warnings, as you can see. So they will get to the or jump to the opportunity to tell you about that problem, that your computer has a lot of problem, and using this time to adapt to the environment to my specific circumstances, and then further they will convince me to that I have serious problem with my machine that I need to resolve. Now what they will do now is they will now take control over this, and they will set a filter lock to show you just specifically the warning. So they will select critical, error and warning. So they will just do this, and as you can see there is a lots of problem and huge amount of information in here, and the application log, as you can see, lots of error and errors. Then they will take control and allow this and open this page to show ourselves or myself that my computer has a lots of error. So now this will help the victim to realize that their machine has a lot of problem, and they will convince the victim that they are doing them a favor. So they will tell that I am going to help you and I am going to solve this problem, and they will tell you how really bad condition is your in PC right now, and then they will tell you that they will help you without any issue. So now they will talk about this, and they will tell you this, that as you can see there is 272 number of events that are problems. So they will specifically focus on this part, and they will tell that as you can see your computer has so many problems, so you need to fix it so that your machine run smooth and without any problem. So then he will give me back my control, and then he will go to desktop, and he has a remote control of the desktop, and he could easily scroll this down and take the invest because they will want me to see. So they will ask me to control and scroll down and see all those errors, so that I can realize that my computer has many problems. So this way they can convince me to scam and try this. So during this process, one time my computer just shut down. So he convinced the social engineering that he will be successful in scamming me. So he waits until while I reboot. So I delayed the remote desktop control and gave him the control again, and he takes me back to this event beer. Then also I continue the same process. So now what they will do is they will try you to do something, and then they will try to convince. The main thing about this is they will try to convince you that your machine has problems, so that they can do the scam stuff on the desktop. So after that, now that I am a victim as a typical victim, and I am as an example pretty convinced, so that my computer has many problem. So then it's time the scammer to turn the discussion around. Now he will provide me something like what social engineering does. They are going to get a return, and they will ask something in return. So let's move on and start to have a look how he created that debt. In the next lecture we will describe how he actually creates that debt. Now in this lecture we will be talking about the creating a debt. So the social engineer last to previously talk about the how we can convince myself that my computer has many errors and problems. Now the social engineer has put a lot of work to establish the authenticity of what it is. So he is telling now that how he feels that I am sufficiently invested in the fact that my computer has some problems. So he can start to work toward the creating a debt. Now in this case he wants me to feel as though I owe him something, and in order to do that we need to give him or give me something of a value, or at least of perceived value. So now he will fabricate a story and convince me that he is just giving me something worth paying for it. So now they will try to use this as a support connection, and when you ask them what it is, then they will say that you have to have a product key. So you have to purchase this product key. So what you have to do, you have to pay annually, and you have to get those 6-digit code. You have to pay him annually for this, so that after that he can try to start the solving process. So social engineering often relies on fabricating a story in a case like this. It is just an outright lie. The 6-digit code is the software loyalty care for your computer. There is no such thing. In fact, all it is a code which allow him to use a different remote control software product so that he can gain persistent control over to my machine. So not just once, we saw previously that we he serves really two purposes: creating a debt because he is about to give me a software royalty key, and he is also using it for further fabricate the story. So what next the scammer will do? So they will give me a good note of what should I say, a brief overview why this needs, why you need this, how this expiry periods works, and which is purely fabricated. Again, it's a part of the plan. So in order to create a debt, he now needs to do something for me. So what the scammer will do, he will perceive the value and will consequently allow him to monetize the scam. So next, he will continue to build the debt, and he spend quite a bit of time. He will spend quite a bit of time explaining about this code, even that he needs that for the legal department. And now he will talking about not only updating the software but also scanning the computer, and this of course ties back to the early findings in the event log that we previously saw. So between extending my warranty and scanning for problem in the machine, I will be now racking up quite a bit, and then what he will do is so he will again talk about the problems that was in my computer, and then he will say that if you want to get the code, and you must need this code to solve this problem. So he will convince me to payment. So this will be the first time, and this is when the first time they will ask me to pay the money, because they want money, because they were convincing me all the time previously, so that they came at a point so that he can ask for money. So because the software needs code and you need money to get the code. So this is the actually first time the money topic will be coming when you face a similar scammer like this, and he will be quite explicit. So he will be like, you don't have to pay a single penny for the service and all of the plan, but in shortly he will indeed charge for the money. But again, this direction in this fashion is another open for the social engineer. He will be leading me to believe that this is a free service, which is what someone might reasonably accept to get from the Microsoft after buying one of their products. So is it really free? So what the scammer will do now is, they will install some services and the software to my machine, and they will ask me that here manager number, you can just talk to it about that. He will give me all of this information so that you can contact. Then what they will do is, they will provide you the service and the software, and they will say this is absolutely free of cost, but there is a lot of focus on those free. So after that, what will do is again reiterating the free of the cost component of the service. Then there is a huge amount of focus on the fact that this doesn't cost any money until that it does cost money. So he will say it isn't a free software, this one, because he will just now cleverly say that this is a yearly plan and you have to pay like $160 a year for the Windows warranty. Like he will give some example, like in Europe this is the policy, etc., etc. So after that, the cost, they will be talking about the cost and the cost of service. And the entire reason the scam exists is that social engineer ultimately needs to capitalize on their effort, and that's done by paying the warranty. So now that after talking about a lot like past 20-30 minutes, he will capitalize their effort and they will make you curious about this. And so if you cleverly say something like what I did, like I said like, why shouldn't I pay directly to Microsoft because of this? So he will then convince you that we all work for Microsoft, we are all underneath the Microsoft, and etc., etc., so that you believe that they are actually working for Microsoft. So in the end, he obviously approached to will say that, and he will remove this thought of my mind that this isn't a scam and they are like a Microsoft team people, and they are the Windows partner, and clearly they should be the one collecting the money. Now by the social engineering is put a lot of work convincing me that I should pay him for this key as well as other services. So he will provide a software on your PC, a free software service, and he will provide this onto your computer, and he will attempt to scan your computer using this free tool. Now the computer is controlled by a social engineer who goes off and download this free software to begin the scan. Now as you can see, this will run, this software will run several minutes, and this is a basic configuration related issue, the scanning process takes some time. So he will let them run, and he will in the point he will just continue talking with you so that you don't notice anything. So and finally after this the victim will now well and truly encrypt, and it's time for them to present a registration form, and we will look that in the future lecture. Now we will talk about the monetization of the scan part. Now the social engineering has fixed the computer, and of course for many victims of a scam like this, they will believe that their machine has genuinely been fixed. Now it's time for them to monetize the scam. So let's look at how they will try to have you pay them. So let's try ways that they will try to pay them. So then we will wrap up seeing how the social engineering responds when the tables are turned on them, and then realize that they are the one who has been engineered. So what now they will try to do is, after doing the scan on your computer, as you see previously, they will try to give you an website and ask you to do the form fill up. So what they are doing is they are also watching you fill up this form. So they will also, as they have all the computer and they have all the, what should I say, they have like control they have like control over your machine, so they can even see what you are typing. And so what they will do is they will get your name, email address, username, password, all of those, and they will ask you to complete this simply for this. So what you will do this, what people complete the registration form using this, and throughout the call they have they have your personal information, or at least they believe. So if you put in a fake name like I did, then they will have like a fake name that I provided. Now is their time to charge you some money. So they will give you like they will tell you about your available plans. They will talk about like why this he needs this service, or what benefit he will be getting. So they will talk about this. So after this they will talk about your annual plan. So they will talk about how many years do you want to your take service. So is it 1 year, so is it 2 year, 4 year, 5 years. So as you can see, this varies from time, varies from dollar or currency. So after that, so since how now that even the scan begins to wind up, and the social engineering convinced that you will give them money, there are let's give it my example. So I will give them money, and they are still fabricating the story of the character that they have created the story or the script. So of course they can see my scan, but in the voice call or in the phone they will say that we are not seeing your screen, but instead they are continuously seeing what I am doing on my computer scan, because they have got my machine on remote control. So now they are able to use that method, or use that remote method, to direct me straight to the payment form. So what they will ask you is they will ask you to give your all the details of your credit card in here, and they will continuously say that we are not seeing any of this page, we are not on remote control, we are not something, etc., etc. But in true, but but they can they have my machine on remote control and they can see me what I am typing. So if I type anything on my card number or anything, they will see all of those detail and then they will use this. And but the thing is I in that moment I didn't type anything. So what I did is I go to another page and just continually talk about that I couldn't go, I cannot visit this page or some issues. Then social engineering has been orchestrated toward the entire call. Then they will want to get me the payment form, and of course using the persistent remote control which they have still have access and full visibility of my skin just despite what they say. So they believe that now directed me all the way through the point where I am now going to pay them $160 for this service that they provided, and what they provide is like zero service. And like a scammer, they will ask you to give them pay like $160. Now this is really the end of their social engineering attempt. And what you need to keep in mind as you reflect back through the previous lectures, that any consumer would fall victim to these scammers. Thus, most technically adept among us, which would be realized that there are many inconsistencies and warning signs very early on the technical nature, but consider the random cold call nature of the scam. Most of the people they talk are not going to be technically like us or engineers who always keeps things in minds into this. Now combining that with the social tricks here that we have seen so far, everything from the era of authority being from the Microsoft, then demonstration the vulnerabilities, then letting the victim browser through the areas themselves, and then finally having the socially engineering to create the debt by providing the license keys and cleaning the solutions that will put yourself to the average victim shows, and that would be a enormously successful scam to most of the regular people who will fall into their trap and give all of those monies and their credit card infos like this. They will just type this, and that's how they got many of their scams successful. So it is very convincing in many ways, but unfortunately for them, in this case, I am not just an average consumer that fall into their trap. So what they will try to do now is they will try to again force me to or convince me to type this in this screen to type or pay the amount of yearly charge. Now we will start to consider how this social engineering scam unravels, and what really interesting here is that as depth goes, this scam is he really starts to struggle when things aren't going to their script, because they have a script like for average people they will go this, they will select this, they will just put this and then done. This all is scripted by or to the average consumers, but for us peoples, so they have really struggled to get things straight or struggle to follow the script. As what I did was I just reload this page and go to another page and just waited in there. I didn't provide anything in here, so I just reloaded a page, other page, and just waited in here. And as you all know, they are on remote control and they are seeing everything, and they are seeing that I am not providing any information or providing them any money. So these things aren't going for their script. So like filling out the payment form, so they are thinking what I am doing, trying to take. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to take him to a website and then just asking, can you see this, can you see this website or not. So he's just stumbling a little bit after that. So indeed the social engineer, or in this case the social engineer, can see any of my skin or any of your skin if you are in this stage. So let's put this back in the social engineering context from the moment. So he is struggling to adapt unexpected changes in the script because I am not giving anything, and that's out of the script. So this is not the way scam was meant to go. So a more competent social engineer wouldn't be so lost for words. So easily they already come back and they would attempt to distract the victim and get back to the track for payment. But in this case, he was nearly not sure what to do. So after I unveiled their secret that I am not gonna pay anything and you are just a cold call scammer and go just die yourself. And once he realized that he himself has been socially engineered, that I am not even paying, I am just following these processes, he does ultimately became very defensive. In fact, though he became very defensive and somewhat aggressive, he is quite certain that he is providing a legitimate service to us. So how many direction and outright lies that have been told in order to get to this point. Now I'll leave you with one final thoughts related to this particular scam. So I have had a number of people, I have seen a number of people who faced those issues and gave money to the scammer. And I can give like 10 to 15 example that and most of them are girls. They are girls or old age people. They just simply give them money and follow the process or script. So now I have had a number of people say to me that this is just operators following a script, or they are doing is going through the process that they themselves are not aware and they are not actually solving any legitimate problem. So in case there are any whatsoever as the types of people who are making these calls, you can search on YouTube, like there have thousands of videos like this for call scammer and how they got caught. So you can just search them and you will get a lots of YouTube channel and YouTube videos about this topic. So I'll say this here, they would be totally inappropriate for reproduction in a lecture like this, and they are very quickly to get abusive, and they will use slang words and they will use abusive words, and some cases very inappropriate when social engineer realize that they have had it and they cannot really pay the social engineer us or you. They will get very vocal and they will get very abusive. So a good reminder is that this is the basic of this scam and how this scam goes. And end of the day, social engineer like this behave pretty much as we expect as from the scammer. So this wraps up the most important part of the cold call that I wanted to share with you. So here you go and search about the cold call virus, and you will find a lots of people or lots of videos in here about this topic. As you can see, lots of Polkar virus content. So go and check that out. You will also will know a lot of things, and you will get a knowledge about how actually they improvise from time to time. So that's the wrap up about this lecture. Just to very clearly align everyone on precisely what we mean by identity theft. So let's start with a quick definition, and the real key here is the deliberate use of someone else's identity. We say identity theft, of course, the victim still has their identity. It's just that an attacker is also using attributes such as their names and other pieces of their personal information using to gain the financial advantage. So the canonical example of identity theft is the attacker might take out like a credit card on the behalf of a victim. So think about all sort of information that you would need to give a financial institute in order to get a loan. That sort of information is what the social engineering is after, because that is going to allow them to assume that they are an identity victim and gain that financial advantage. Now there are many different ways that identity theft happens, and that many levels of severity as well. So let's look at couple of the raw numbers in terms of how prevalent this social engineering attack is. So 17.6 million people falling victim to identity theft in 2014, and it's just in the US. The global figure is many times higher than that, and that is historically high number, and it's number that is only increasing over the time as we have more and more avenues where our identities can be obtained from. We will look at some of those through this lecture. Now as high as this number is, here is an even bigger number, almost $25 billion. That's the financial losses just US citizens suffered due to the identity theft back in 2012 as well. So even 10 years ago there was a huge loss. That was the statistics that I could find in the US Department of Justice. So inevitably over the time the number has grown somewhat, like unfortunately like billions, millions, or even trillions of dollars that grow as well. So because that's identity theft has become more prevalent, plus of course this is just an US number. Globally and years on this number will undoubtedly looking at like hundreds of billions of dollars due to the identity theft. Now these numbers are obviously very high on the aggregate level, but down at the end visual level, many victims of identity theft don't even know where the attack you got there, and so many different avenues by which someone else's identity can be compromised that very often we simply don't even know where the attacker got the identity from. Have to think about some of the sources that we have looked at. Although throughout this lecture of data witches or eavesdropping, all of those channels are potential vectors by which attackers can gain enough information to steal victim's identity, and thus that's not even to mention attack vectors such as malware, malicious software running on the victim computer, stealing things like password or banking information as they enter into the website. Sorry about that. So it's no wonder when our information is exposed in so different places that victim of the identity theft simply have no idea how it happened. They have to compound the problem. So even further, identity data is often purchased and traded So I will show you in the future how that happened in a real life underground marketplace. So in 2012, the journalist Matt Honan was the target of identity theft, and it was a very serious attack that he later wrote about in details and referred to as his epic hacking. And he is quite right. This attack was very epic, and in fact I want to talk you through about the details of the man, the Honan, that he wrote about, because that shows that many really interesting aspect of many social engineering and identity theft in his hacking, epic hacking part that he faced or that he suffered. So let's take a quick look at the Matt Honan's epic hacking, with especially targeted by attacker, and attacker wanted to match his Twitter account. Now what's really happening about this episode is that this lecture is that I want to show you in details how many things the attacker had to chain together and how many levels are social engineering you had to use in order to ultimately get access to Matt's Twitter account. Now let's walk through how it happened. And so we do this. I am going to start to detail which of Matt's personal identity attributes, so that attacker has a knowledge of. It started with his Twitter handle, which is fine. Your Twitter handle is something public. The attacker knew this was able to then go to and take a look at Matt's Twitter account. Now this is just his public Twitter account, but of course one of the things that you see on the Twitter account is that the user's web address, so we will add that information. That's one of the thing, and the attacker now knows that that's the first part of the attack done with that. So the attacker was with that known, the attacker was able to go to and take a look at Matt's website. Now one of the things that Matt had on his website was his Gmail address. And that's quite usual. Many people have their email address on their website, so they can be contacted. But now that's one of the other piece of the information that the attacker has. With that known, that the attacker went to Gmail and attempted a password, attempted account recovery. Now what this meant was that attacker was able to see Matt's recovery email address. So this is the address that can be used to regain control over the account. So if the user forget their password, what was actually shown when the recovery process was kicked off, that was an obfuscated recovery address, is this one here at, as you can see under the left, me dot .com. So that's the Apple's mail service, and what happened is that it's obviously pretty clear what the address is. It is Matt's and my email address. After all, we all know that the attackers start the email address will start with M and end with N. So it really didn't take too many guesses for the attacker to figure it out what the address really was. Now not only does the attacker now knows another one of the Matt's email address, but he knows that Matt has Apple ID. Now that's what happened when you get to me.com addresses, you have an Apple ID. So that's another piece of very useful information that you will see used shortly. So the next thing attacker did is to run a Matt's website address, and now one of those pieces of the data that you can obtain from who is me.search is that physical address of the registered. So That's assuming that they haven't been able to privacy in order to hide his home address, Manhattan. So now the attacker has his home address. Well, now that added to the list by now. So the attacker is now starting to build quite a lot of information about Matt's and much of his category that we talked previously. So this was to find out the information about a target. The next thing attacker did is called up Amazon and added a credit card to Matt's ID address or Matt's account. How did the attacker do this? Well, all he had to provide to Amazon in order to add a credit card was the name of the account, and which is obviously Matt Honan's, and the email address on the account which they take the lead. So he had the mailing address. So that's what attacker would obtain which search, but all that really was to didn't add credit card into the account. But what really meant was for the attacker is that he had now another piece of information, that the number of a card of a Matt's Amazon account. Now with that turn, the attacker went away and come back later to caught up the Amazon support and added an email address, and that he controls on the Matt's account now. What that means is that the attacker could come back and do a password reset on Amazon. So of course, once the attacker does that, he has another piece of information, the password for Amazon account. And the password for Amazon account, the attacker could now log into the Matt's account. Now that's given a full of access or control to Amazon profile. So once he had that, he was able to obtain another piece of really useful information, the last 4 digits of Matt's card. And Matt has put his on his Amazon account. Now this is not the entire card number of the Matt's credit card. So this is just the last 4 digits. So we will add that to the list of the things that the attacker now has. Now the last 4 digits of a credit card may not seem particularly valuable, but they are really valuable because when it meant that was attacker could go now and get in touch with Apple Care. He now knows that Matt has an Apple account that was established back when he found that me.com email addresses. Now he is with those credit card last 4 digits of the card is in his hand, which is useful. Now Apple verification process required those last 4 digits of a credit card in order to go and set a temporary Apple ID passwords, and that's not unusual. Many different organizations verify individuals based on the last 4 digits of the card, and this is why in many ways just last 4 digits are just as dangerous as the entire card itself. So if a card gets to fraud it, you simply cancel it on the bank. The bank usually refunds the money and issued it a new card. But if even just the last 4 digits are obtained, there are much more can attacker do, such as going and taking control of the other account because of the way they use their verification attributes. So now with an Apple ID password in hand, the attacker also has to control the Matt's Apple ID, and now because he has controlled the Apple ID, he also has control of Matt's me.com addresses or Matt's web addresses. So this is the account that was used for recovery of the Gmail account. So because of the Apple ID takeover, the attacker has a control of all Matt's devices. So with total control of the Matt's Apple's things like Apple, iPhone, iPad, iMac, and etc. Then he remote wipe all those Matt's Apple devices. So all what when is gone, not only he was able to wipe those, but of course he can now also had control of the Matt's iCloud backup, because there is a way that Apple ecosystem works. When you control the Apple ID, you can control the all things that is in the cloud. And in fact that was one of the first thing Matt actually knew about the attack. So look at how many things that happen up until this point. And the first indication that Matt got was when his device were wiped. So then he noticed. So after this, with control of the account recovery email addresses at me.com, the attack has full control of Matt's Gmail address that he really used in his as his primary email account. So it's often said that someone's email account is effectively the skeleton key of their other account, because when you control your email, you can go and do things like password reset on other accounts. And how many times have you done a password reset? And the only means of verification was on an email sent to the register address. So if you can receive that and click on the link on that email, you can just take the full account. And that's exactly what happened with Matt's Twitter. So finally the attacker has achieved his objective. He had control of Matt's Twitter, and then that was the goal all along. He wanted to get to that account, but it's really interesting study in social engineering the way the attacker was able to speak to the Amazon and speak to Apple Care as well. And he used those pieces of information that he was grabbing along all the way to impersonate Matt and convince the operator to perform an action on his behalf that never should have happened. Now of course there are many things that he didn't the Matt didn't did right, because Matt was wrong also as well, because so for example not having set up a multi-step verification in his all account was a bad decision, and that's available on all of these accounts. So Matt hadn't turned on, and if Matt hadn't turned on, and then this wouldn't even happened, and this attack would have dead in first place. So as easy as it may seem, it is also very easy to defend against by using some of these fundamental account protection controls that we have available to us right now. Two-factor verification like this, etc. So we'll talk more about in the next lecture. So this was a great example of how an epic hacking, and really it was epic hacking, a lot of things that had happened to get to this end product. So let's look now at really another easy simple example, and that's really impactful in impersonal social engineering, and this could be very easy and lead to identity theft. So in this lecture we're going to be talking about in-person human-based identity theft. So there is a fantastic video from 2015 where the talk host Jimmy Kimmel reported out on the street to ask people about their password practices. Now the clip in both are enormously entertaining and enormously enlightening, because it tells us not only how people like to create their password, but how easy it is socially engineer out of them. Now I really recommend going and watching this video, but I want to talk precisely about how the social engineered the password and password out of the lady of the screen in here. So here is how it went down. So the reporter talking to the victim, and for all intent and purposes the lady was the victim of a social engineering attack, and the reporter asked, so what is one of your online password? Now the victim is initially smart enough not to give a direct answer, she tells the reporter instead how she creates the password by dog name and year of the graduation that she graduated. So that's fairly common. That's the sort of practices people use to memorize the pattern. Now, the reporter does not push her back for exactly what the password is. Instead, she starts asking about the dog. What kind of dog do you have? It's a little bit of misdirection because the answer to this question is no way directly to figuring out what the actual password was. So the victim responds, I have a papillon. So that's fine. But then open the door for the reporters. Next question is, what is his name? Now that's a perfect reasonable question to someone when you are talking about their dog and without thinking the victim's response. So it's Jamison. Now that's great because the social engineer, and let's also be clear what the report here is. She engineering this information at the victim, then she moves on to the next question. So where did you go to school? So she is not directly going and saying, hey, when did you graduate? That could well scare the victim. Instead, she is making conversation pretty and getting the victim off guard. And the victim replied, I went to school back in Pennsylvania. The social engineer then pushes onward. What school was it? That field area, and that was Hatfield area senior high school. Again, a piece of information which is of no direct relevance to what the value of the password actually is, but is given the two of them is enough to report as the conversation is casual, everybody is relaxed. So the social engineer then asks what she really wants to know. When did you graduate? And of course, by now the victim is perfectly relaxed and responds with the answer is 2009. So that's the whole thing in 6 simple questions and 6 simple answers. The social engineer now has the victim's password, and as we have now seen, passwords are enormously valuable commodity to an attacker who then wants to engage in identity theft. Now, how many places has the victim potentially reused this same password? She was pretty certain when she first responded to the reporter that this is the password she uses. It's not the password that she used in one place for one purpose, but rather this is almost certainly that the password she has used and reused in many websites and many cases, because this is what so many people do with their passwords. There is also why data breaches are such valuable resources of social engineering, because there is a high certainty that the password that appear in those attackers are going to work in many other different places. Now, one of the techniques we have seen multiple times throughout this lecture is epic hacking is or impersonation. And in-person is really a key part of a social engineering. So let's now move on and have a look at in more details. So I want to give you a really good example of how impersonation is being used in another real world attack. So impersonation is a such key in a part of social engineering, and I want to give you three specific example, as you can see of there what I've seen it in play. So either by me having the opportunity to exercise and impersonate the attacks, a bank behaving in a way that appears to be impersonation, and then another financial institution demonstrate how legitimate organization should behave in order to give their customer confidence that is not associated with identity theft. So let's start with the story here. and this is a true story between me and my wife, and yeah, it's a true story where my wife has asked me to go to the doctors and pick up the prescription for her. Now normally this is something that she would pick up herself, but she was at home sick in bed, so she asked me to go, and when I went to the doctor's office and asked for the prescription, the respondent then said, "Look, I'm sorry, but they needed her to come in and do it in person." So that's not unusual in order to fulfill a medical prescription, but of course that wasn't really an option, so I made it clear that she was sick, but I asked if they could just possibly give her a call. Now in this case they didn't actually have her number, which left us is a bit of in problem, so I offered them a solution. Perhaps I could call her for them. They were quite happy for me to do that, but knowing what you know about social engineering and impersonation, you can probably spot the problem. They were willing to let me the person that they would not allow to directly pick up the prescription to direct them into the personal and talk to the verified, and then talk to the verify the identity. Now all I want to do is to talk to my wife, and I could have like called anyone, like I could have fixed a person to talk like my wife and just do social engineering. So they effectively gave me the role of verification process. Now I did legitimately call my wife, and she said, "Yes, I have sent my husband in to collect the prescription. Please allow him to pick it up." But I could have called anyone because I am the person under the suspicion that had complete control over the verification process. So that's one example. So let me give you another one. I got a call one day. So the phone rang, and then after I picked up the phone, there is a long pause. So it sounded like a very long distance call, and then after that the operator talked with a foreign accent and started talking, and it sounded like they are on a voice connection. So the sort of connection that would be very cheap if not freely available from other location. So it sounded suspicious, but what the person on the other hand on the line said next is that what really made me suspicious. They told me that they were my bank and they wanted to verify some of my information. Now this had me curious. I wonder what sort of information they like to verify. So I said, okay, how would you like to do that? And then they started asking my personal information. They wanted my birth date. Now this is like the last four digit of a credit card data attribute, which we previously talked about. This was every possibility that they wanted my date of birth so that they could go and steal my identity from someone else. So I responded, I would like to verify. I like to verify you. But they were saying, and they couldn't believe it, so they were saying that but we are your bank, we need to verify you. But clearly I wasn't going to turn around and give them my date of birth. In fact, I made it very clear that I need to verify you. Can I call you back? Now to me this was quite reasonable because I wanted to independently verify their identity, and they responded to this. They offered to give me the phone number, and this is not the similar number of the doctor's prescription example, because here we have a situation where the party is under suspicion. So this is, in this case, the caller is offering me something which really gives them control of the verification process. They could give me a number and I would have to verify it. In fact, I offered, and I cannot give you a number to verify it with one of the website which they responded. Well, this is a different number. It's not the same number that was on website. So or a different number of the bank, because this was a different number that was not available on the website, bank's website. So I told them I believe it was a phishing attack, and I hang up. But they called back in the following day, and we repeated the process, and I hang up again. They called back on the weekend, and we repeated the process, and yet again and again I just hang up. After that I decided I had to report it to my bank. So it was only at that point that I discovered it really was my bank that it called, and that bank I had a fundamental flaw in the process. They ticked so many different boxes which should alert the customer to a potential phishing attack, and obviously had no training whatsoever about how the customer should actually independently verify the caller. So it was a massive shortcoming into their implementation. A multi-billion dollar bank to now as a bad example as this. Let me give you one more example of financial institution that got it right. So I had another call one day, and it was a somewhat similar process, and the caller said, hey, we are from your credit card company and we need to verify, and we should verify is if we are speaking to the right person. Now it's perfectly reasonable for a credit card company to want to do this, but it's equally reasonable for me to want to verify them. So now this time the whole process took a very different turn. For example, the operator simply said, then I said, but first I need to verify you, and then the operator said, call us on the number on the back of your credit card. It was that easy. I pulled the credit card out of my wallet, looked up the number, which of course couldn't have been faked by a social engineer, called them back, and got straight through the same operator. Again, it was an extremely simple process to the operator, which is clearly well prepared to these questions. They understood the indicators of a possibly social engineering attack, and then they knew the answer to give the customers, so that they have confidence that they themselves are not being socially engineered. So those three stories are great example of how all of us in our everyday life come across to the risk of social engineering and impersonation, and indeed how you will inevitably identify in verification process. Now that you know that what to look for, so that was a good example of where some in-person social engineering could have easily taken place. So in this lecture we are going to talk about buy and sell identities. So in recent articles it is called Fools. Comprehensive stolen identities are assembled by criminals and sold on the dark web for a few $100 each. But even login for online services such as Airbnb or Group Hub can provide more than enough opportunity for theft. In fact, according to the recent NBC News report, the average internet user's identity is worth $1,200 to hackers. So why so much? Because stolen identities can be reused in many ways. It's pretty obvious why Fools is so valuable to a criminal. With so much information, the buyer can open a new account or take over existing account and simply change the contact information. So the owner doesn't realize what's happening until it's too late. But what happens when similar sets of stolen personal information get exploited? Real social security numbers may be combined with a fake or unrelated names, addresses, and birthdays to create a synthetic identities, which can be used to open a new account. Or they may be sold to the people who are in the US, who are living in the US illegally, or who need a fake identity for criminal purposes. username and password for services such as Airbnb, Uber or Grubhub sell for less than $10 on digital black markets. But criminals can use them to steal the host or driver's earning by diverting payments on a highly rated Airbnb guest account that can be used to book time in a luxury property in order to commit the burglary. So finally, stolen identities are a long-term investment for a criminal. An identity can be sold multiple times, and a buyer can use the stolen information to commit multiple kinds of fraud over a number of years. Now, with what can you see in the screen in front of you? This is the Tor browser bundle. You may already be familiar with Tor. It's an acronym for the onion router, commonly referred to as anonymity network. It consists of many thousands of nodes by which user traffic is anonymously routed, such that their identity shouldn't be able to traced within the Tor ecosystem. There are various online markets designed to run in a fashion that's very difficult to trace back the origin. We are looking at one of those marketplaces now, one of those most popular one, and due to the nature of the material which is traded on this marketplace of obfuscated the name of the URL. Now what I will really say, this is just one of the many, and I have chosen this one because it gives a really good example of how commoditized our identities are. In fact, let me give you an example of how stolen identities are traded on this site. So we can see in left the categories of the goods that are traded on this site: drugs, counterfeit items, digital products, jewels, golds, weapon, etc. This is an underground black market, and it's really very easy to accessible using a Tor browser, and a hidden service Tor is as simple as just downloading so the Tor browser bundle and going to the URL. Now what I am particularly interested in showing you here is that what's available within the fraud category, which is more than 12,000 results, as you can see here. You can see categories such as accounts and bank drop, CBP and cards dump, others and personal information. All of these stolen data put up for sale by online criminals. In fact, we can see the first item in the search result is a credit card, and in fact if we see and select one of those credit card data, and this is from many different seller as well. So if we select one, this is the reflective of a normal marketplace. So we have a seller and we have this selling history, and we have rating, trust level, and of course have a purchasing price. As you can see, this is a purchasing price of $8.5. So in many ways this is not dissimilar to the store that you and I used many times before, but it just happened to be trading and installing the data. Now this is just a credit card. So let's look down and look at the personal information and scans. When we have look up those searches, as you can see, this is the personal information and scan. We start to understand the seriousness of what's going on. USA profiles, social security numbers, date of birth, and all of this at only a single dollar, something per identity. That's how cheap it can be to purchase the information and then use that to engage in serious identity theft, because this is the sort of information which is then used to go and load ongoing and get a credit card. Now you will notice that the prices here differ as well. As you can see, the first one is 1.5, second one 1.25, third one is very low, $0.20, and the fourth one is just 0.01. And really demonstrate how commodities this identity become and all of this. So have a pair carefully calculated worth, and that's a value of up and down depending on the state of the market as well. For example, after large credit card breaches, where there is a flood of supply, just like other commodities that suddenly have a high degree of availability, the prices are driven down in line at a time. So when there are less than available, the price that gets driven back up, it's a market force to or at play, just like they are with any other tradable commodity. Here is something else that's interesting around the way PAR identities are priced. This is quite insightful, and it shows just how valuable our online accounts are, and online accounts that can be valuable. We normally think about credit card as being the thing that we have got really carefully protected sorry, and look after. So because after all of that, which can be immediately monetized, but they can only be monetized up until the point where they cancelled, and they very often have limits that the identity theft will hit very early on. Now compare that to the credential for something like Twitter, which are inevitably reused across all sorts of other services. That rate of potential attacks that are socially engineered has significantly high controlling of victims' credential and being able to log into service as the enormous value thing for the online criminals. So I am going to go and talk about through an example of this in the future lectures. So a perfect example of identity theft via account takeover, and show you just how valuable someone's credential that can be, and how can people misuse this credential to their benefits.
Hello everyone, let's talk about social engineering and a useful tool, Beef. So what is Beef? Beef is an interpreter for the brainfuck programming languages. Its main goals are to be comfortable for the user and to run most brainfuck programs. Unchanged speed is generally quite good. Beep performs through error checking to make sure malformed programs are not executed. It also supports a bunch of command line options that can be used for configuration or compatibility process. If GVFS is installed, Beep can use any available backend as either output, or where it makes sense, input source. GNU Redline is used for interactive input. There are 3 ways to install Beep. Whenever you complete the setup of Beep, you guys can see this type of interface like getting started page, a simple page, and some information is showing there. Like, before being able to fully explore the framework, you will have to hook a browser. To begin with, you can point a browser towards the basic demo page. If you want to hook any page, drag the following link. This is instruction. Hooked browsers, it's important thing, like To interact with a hooked browser, simply left-click it. A new tab will appear. Each hooked browser tab has a number of subtabs. Here is a dashboard about beep uses example. Your fellow command is beep xss, and you might need to refresh your browser once it opens. Here you guys can see web user interface, hook, and example, some information about So what is social engineering, guys? Social engineering attacks are a type of cybercrime wherein the attacker fools the target through impersonation, and they might pretend to be your boss, your supplier, someone from your IT team, or your delivery company. Regardless of who they are impersonating, their motivation is always the same: extracting money or data. The biggest social engineering attack of all time was perpetrated by Lithuanian national evildoers Rimas against two of the world's biggest companies, Google and Facebook. Rimas and his team set up a few fake companies pretending to be a computer manufacturer that worked with Google and Facebook. So beef xss command start, and how you guys can stop this tool, just give command beef xss stop. The hacker, the scammers then sent phishing emails to specific Google and Facebook employees, invoicing them for goods and services that the manufacturer had genuinely provided, but directing them to deposit money into their fraudulent accounts. Between 2013 and 15, Rimas Sauskas and his associates cheated the two tech giants out of the over $100 million. With the browser exploitation framework is a testing tool designed to enable penetration testers to launch client-side attacks against target browsers by using techniques. Now I show you guys about beep uses. This is a website heading. I connect a website. Once logged in, we are greeted with a helpful getting started page that explains some of additional options, but most important point is the first paragraph. Here we will learn how to hook a browser. Beep provides two example pages in order to the beep hook is a JavaScript file hosted on the beep server that needs to run on the client browser. When it does, it calls back to the beep server, communicating a lot of information about the target. It also allows additional commands and modules to be run against the target. An example, the location of beef hook is at https 192.168.1.101 hook.js. When you click on any machine on the left, you will see a lot more details and functionality. The video shows the logs tab. On the right, we can see that type secret password into the text box on the demo page. Notice that I didn't submit the page, I just typed it in. As an experiment, try clicking anywhere else on the demo page except for the next box. Now type something like ABCD or just like it. Now go back to the beef control panel and click the refresh button at the bottom of the logs tab. You should notice a new event similar to this. And now you guys can click on the commands tab. You will find a wide range of commands and exploits that can be launched against your target. Try them out, but be patient. Sometimes it takes a while for commands to finish and report their results. Addition to the exploits listed, beef can also be integrated with Metasploit in order to launch a wider range of exploits against the host system. That will be another big boost. Notice that some of the commands have different colored icons. If you click back to the getting started tab, there's an explanation of what each of the colors represent. Like lemon color module works against the target and should be invisible to the user. Red color, the command module works against the target but may be visible to the user. White color, the command module is yet to be verified against this target. And last one, dark red, the command module does not work against the target. Beef is short for the browser exploitation framework, I said already, and it is a penetration testing tool also that focuses on the web browsers. Growing concerns about web-borne attacks against clients, including module clients. Beef allows the professional penetration tester to access the actual security posture of a target environment by using client-side attack vectors. Unlike other security frameworks, Beef looks past the hardened network perimeter and client system and examines exploitability within the context of the one open door, the web browser. Beef will hook one or more web browsers and use them as batch heads against the system from within the browser context. Here are some hooked browsers, online browsers and offline browsers. You guys can see details, logs, commands, proxy, XSS, race network, and this information is for current browser. What address you give XSS hook URL, and you guys can find their details information. So that's it guys, hope you guys liked it and thanks for watching.
we're going to learn the basic of website hacking and penetration testing. So in this website hacking and penetration testing part, we're going to learn a lot of things. So first of all, we're going to learn the local file inclusion vulnerabilities, and then we're going to learn the remote file inclusion vulnerabilities. But first, we're going to learn the file inclusion vulnerabilities. So in the file inclusion vulnerabilities, there are two parts. So first one will be local file inclusion vulnerability, and second one will be remote file inclusion vulnerability. Then we're going to learn the code execution vulnerabilities. After that, we're going to learn about the uploading file and vulnerabilities, how we can upload the file using methods in Kali Linux. So we're going to also learn about that. Then we're going to learn the part of SQL injection. So SQL injection will be in a 4-part. So in the first part of SQL injection, we're going to learn the data extracting. Then second part, we're going to learn the blind SQL injection. Then in the third part, we're going to learn some advanced technique using SQL injection. And after learning the advanced technique, then we're going to move into the evasion technique, which is the automatic attacks. Then after that, we're going to learn the cross-site scripting, which is XSS. And then in the cross-site scripting, we're going to learn and understand the cross-site attacks, how this attack works and how to attack website using cross-site scripting. Then into this cross-site scripting second part, we're going to learn about the website hacking part. So into the website hacking part, we're going to use the like XSS to hack website. So, and after that, at the end of this website hacking penetration testing part, we're going to learn the web server hacking. And in this web server hacking part, we're going to learn some advanced attack method. Then into this SQL injection and blind SQL injection part, we're going to learn how to enumerate via the ASCII value. Then into this web server hacking advanced attack part, we're going to first learn about the defacement attack, then poisoning the web cache, and after that brute force attack. And at the end of this part, we're going to learn and give some real world example of website hacking with some demonstration. So in this lecture, we're going to be talking about the local file inclusion vulnerabilities. So as we previously talked about the application that will be running on like Linux or Windows. So we'll just now we will describe those in detail. So for Linux, so this code means this would move to 3 directories and try to save file as this one, this file inside the root folder. So this is the directory. If the root folder is located that 3 directories are from the current directory, then we will be able to read the password file. So in case we aren't able to read it, we may try appending additional forward slashes to see if it is works. So for Windows, this would move to 3 directories. So as you can see, 3 to reach the ini file. However, in Windows you can use forward slashes as well. So keep a note. So if our root folder is located 3 directories up from the current directory, then we will still be able to reach it using the 5 sequences of forward hashes. Like there will be 5, not this one, there will be this one. So this is because of the operating system would ignore all the right slashes, this slash, after it reaches the root directory. So in the following cases, we are able to read the password file without using the forward slash sequences. So this is because the password file was located inside our current directory. As we have learned from the past that password file is a very important file, then that can be used for username enumeration. As you can see, password file, this is the password file. So you may try enumerating other files such as host, groups or issues. So this file can be revealed with a bunch of information about the target operating system. Now that we have identified that a certain input parameter used to include files, our goal would be to get our command executed on the target system, which means turning the local file inclusion vulnerability into a remote command execution. There are various approaches of doing this, so we will discuss couple of them. The first approach is trying to read the unturned file, this file, on the local file system, and this file would display information about process information. However, it would reflect back to us our user agent that the browser sent to the server, which we can use to execute the PHP code. Now we are testing against this DVWA tool, which is a Metasploit tool. So we will try access using environ by moving several directories up. As you can see, several directories up. So as you can see, we have successfully managed to access the environ file, as you can see, and it reflects back our user agent, and it also return us path to our document root, which indicate that we have access to the environ file that we can now inject our code. So to inject our code, we would temper the request with a verb suite and manipulate the user agent field with a PHP code. So this page this page contains the result obtained by executing the command under the agent, and which is HTTP user agent. So as you can see, the user agent display information about the operating system. So this indicates that we have successfully managed to obtain a remote command execution on the target server. So our next goal would be try to uploading a PHP shell. So we can do it by using either curl or wizard or fetch a PHP shell from a remote location and output it on the server. The command will be like this one, PHP. So the target server would now download a PHP shell hosted at the URL that we provided, and then output it to shell.php, this one, inside the current directory. So if the command get executed successfully, we would have a shell uploaded on the current directory with the name shell.php. As you can see, it runs successfully, and you can see all the directories also make sure your Apache also, and you can see all of those information in here. And as you can see, this is the shell.php that we are talking about. Assume that you are in a scenario when you have successfully found a local file inclusion vulnerability and you are not able to access the environ file that we previously talked. So in this case, we will switch to another method for exploiting a local file inclusion vulnerability, and the method is widely known as log file injection. The idea behind log file injection is to first determine whether the logs are stored on the server, which vary from server to server. We can try brute forcing command location to determine a log file. However, I will also explain a different method for finding log file in case you are unable to locate them. Since our target web server is Apache 2, the most location for Apache log file is in the /log and underscore Apache, as we all know. So this is the how the logs looks like. As you can see, the log files return user agent, which is what we want to inject our PHP code and then execute it by using local file inclusion. So let's see if we are able to access it with our vulnerable application. We are indeed able to access the log file. As you can see, this is the log file, and as you can see, lots of information for your target application. So its location might be different from your machine, but you can try looking for logs in the following path. So these paths are the default path for logs for different web server versions. So these are the all different paths of log files. So make sure you check all of that. To save time, you can use burp includer to brute forcing for log files. So when you notice a changes in the content length or response time, you have possibly found the log files. Now that we have found the log file, our next step would be the test if we are able to inject the PHP code in them. So we'll try loading the PHP info file, and which contain a bunch of information about the installation of PHP. So from this picture you can see that we have successfully managed to upload the PHP info file, which indicated that we are able to execute our code on the target web server. And finally we would try uploading a C99 shell for easy access of this on the target. So this is the command, make sure you check that clearly, and this is the C99 shell for access the target. And then we have successfully managed to upload a C99 shell to the target server, and now we can execute our command on the target server depending upon the privilege that assigned to us. So as you can see, we are now good to go in here, and this has also uploaded a C99 shell on the targeted server. Now we will be talking about local file inclusion vulnerability, but first we need to know about the local file discover vulnerability. So what is local file discover vulnerability? So local file discover, also known as unrestricted file downloads, and vulnerability that is classified under the insecure data object reference of OWASP top 10. In case of the LFD vulnerability, an attacker may be able to download internal files by using directory traversal. This may enable an attacker to read the source code of sensitive file, such as configuration file, which holds the credential for the database. The vulnerability occurs due to the improper validation of the read file function inside the PHP. So there are similar functions inside other languages that allow similar capabilities. The read file function, which is responsible for reading a specific file and then saving it to output buffer. So if there is no validation being performed on the function, an attacker can traverse through directories and download the file as their desire. So let's check out the vulnerable code. So this is the vulnerable code. So in this code, the input is taken via the get parameter file and passed through the read file, this one. So this is the function. So as you can clearly see, there is no validation being performed on the type of input file that an attacker can request from the web server. Similarly, vulnerabilities can occur within a improper handling of another function called file get contents, which is the another function that will handle another function for the similar vulnerabilities. So let's look at the example. So let's take a real world example of how this attack can be used to compromise a target. I would not disclose the website URL for security reason and to maintain ethics. So this URL, assuming that no proper validation is being performed on the type of file that we request for, we can download and try to download the local files. So we will start download the file index.file from this website or this URL. So in this first line, the require ones, this one, this is the function that is used to include the connection / configuration.php file, which probably contains the database credential used to connect to the database. Then using this URL, the configuration file contain the database credential. So we will try to connect with the hostname, which is MySQL. This one, this is the hostname. So normally after we manage to gain the database credential, we will try to find the path to phpMyAdmin, which is a GUI based tool that handles the MySQL database, as we all know, we all used and tried the MySQL database, I think. So another approach is to actually see if the website allows remote MySQL login and try using the credential to login. So this is the, I think, common scenario of who works on a phpMyAdmin. So this is the phpMyAdmin page, and after finding a path to phpMyAdmin, we will try logging to it. So once we in, we can start then manipulating the database. So once we log into the phpMyAdmin, as you can see, this will be the home page or default page that you get. So from there, we can start manipulating the database however way we want. Hello everyone, so in this lecture we are going to be talking about the basics of remote file inclusion vulnerability. So what is RFI or remote file inclusion? So remote file inclusion is an attack targeting vulnerabilities in web application that dynamically reference external scripts. The perpetrator goal is to exploit the referencing function in an application to upload malware like backdoor shells, etc. from a remote URL located with a defined domain. The consequences of a successful RFI attack include information theft, compromised server, and a site takeover that allows for content modification. So this graph illustrates the typical flow of RFI attack. So as you can see, attacker exploit the remote file inclusion vulnerability to upload the backdoor shell. Then first, the attack uses a search engine to identify a website using a vulnerable component. Then attack uses a scanner to identify a website with a vulnerable component. Then after that, each or from these two, one of them if will be exploited, and then the attacker exploit the remote file inclusion. Then they upload a backdoor shell like malware, which is installed in the machine. Then our server will be hijacked or data will be compromised. So there is a two types of file inclusion. One is remote file inclusion, one is local file inclusion. So you have a question like, what is the difference between remote and local? So RFI means remote file inclusion, or LFI means local file inclusion. So similar to RFI, local file inclusion is a vector that involves uploading malicious file to the server via the web browser. So the two vectors are often referenced together in the context of file inclusion attack. So file inclusion vulnerabilities are not very common nowadays. In fact, in modern application you would rarely come across these vulnerabilities. However, this being said, file inclusion vulnerabilities have certainly not been eliminated from the web. You would find several thousand of websites still vulnerable to this attack. So in this lecture, we will take a look at how we can rest an input parameter for a file inclusion vulnerability, and then discuss various methods that can be used to exploit file inclusion vulnerabilities. File inclusion vulnerabilities can also be included in the category of input validation vulnerabilities. File inclusion vulnerabilities are mostly common with PHP. Just like in the other languages, PHP also contains built-in functions that allow dynamic file inclusion. So, if the data passed through those functions that are not checked, it may allow an attacker to execute a code of his choice. In PHP, we find our four major functions that can be used to include a file to the clause of the most of the file inclusion vulnerabilities. Those functions are include underscore once, require, and require underscore once. So, file inclusion vulnerabilities can be divided into two categories, namely remote file inclusion and local file inclusion. Both of them are pretty much the same. The only difference is the file that we will try to include. So, if we allow to include a remote file inclusion, it would result in a local file inclusion. The end goal is to get our code executed somehow. So, let's talk about remote file inclusion first. To understand a remote file inclusion vulnerability, so take a look at this code. The bold line indicated the vulnerable code. As you can see, the include function is being used to include files to the server based upon the user passed through the get parameter. As soon as the this is executed inside the browser, there will be a PHP file, PHP shell that would be included to the web server, and as a result of which attacker now would able to be execute system command based upon the privileges. So example, we use this include function. However, this attack also works on other variable functions such as require or require underscore once, since they also can be abused to include files. A common patch to this problem is applied by the concreting any extension with the file that the user has been included. So take a look at this code. From this code we can see that $sign file, this one variable contains the user input taken via the get request. So in this very next line, the $sign file variable is passed through the include function and later it append with the HTML. This means that a.html function would be added in front of every file that attacker tries to include. So as a result, the attacker won't be able to include PHP file, as it would become a file.php.html and it won't be executed. A workaround this path is basically using a null byte in front of the .php extension, which acts as a string terminator, and it would terminate the string after the file.php, and hence our PHP file would be executed. However, note that this trick only works on website running older PHP version, not the newer one. So we need to understand the defense so that we can plan better attack. So in php.ini there are two important function whose misconfiguration appears to be the main cause of a file inclusion vulnerability. So the first function is called allow underscore url underscore f open, this one. So which is used to fetch external file by using either HTTP or FTP. So if the function is disabled, an attacker won't be able to include files even if the code is vulnerable on the application side, as functions such as file underscore get function. So if the developer has disable this allow underscore url open function, there is no way to modify php.ini file to change the values, and attacker can still include internal files. And this brings us to the next type of inclusion vulnerability, which is local file inclusion. We'll talk next, but as you can see in this picture, is exact shows that a vulnerable PHP ini file in here. As you can see, php.ini file, this is the vulnerable PHP. So let's talk about local file inclusion. As discussed before, when allow underscore url include fopen is disabled, or that one is disabled, an attacker won't be allowed to include external file. However, when allow underscore the previous one function is turned on inside the PHP file, we can include the local files. To understand local file inclusion, let's look at this code. So this line indicated the vulnerable code, and as you can clearly see, the user's input taken via the get variable, which is append to the var underscore directory. This means that the attacker can traverse through local path to access local files, and this vulnerability is also known as directory traversal vulnerability. In case the target application is running on like Linux based browser or Linux based server, we can use this to move one directory up until we reach the file such as password or host, etc., something like that, or the root folder. The reason we are trying to read this file is because we can accessible it by any user. In case you are up against a Windows server, we would use / to move one directory up and try to read the file such as winboot.ini inside the root folder. So in this lecture, we are going to be talking about exploiting basic remote file inclusion vulnerability. So, but first we have to talk about remote command execution. So we have discussed a lot scenario on how an attacker can exploit vulnerabilities such as SQLI or LFI or RFI to use or cause execute system command. However, now we will specify a scenario where the actual code is vulnerable due to the lack of input filtering, and we are directly able to execute command via the input parameter. The scenarios that we are talking about will be to discuss and not that common in real life. However, they should be enough for you to understand the concept. In PHP, there are multiple functions that help you to interact with the system to execute the system command. However, these are not the all that you should execute, but the PHP documentation itself gives a warning about the function and advise the developer to handle them with a great care and to use functions such as escape shell rg and escape shell cmd to filter out the user supply command. So first example, so let's look at a very simple example of remote command execution vulnerability with shell execution function, this function. So this line is the vulnerable code, and notice that the user input taken from the get parameter cmd is passed directly through the so as I was saying, so let's get fast. So the line in here is the vulnerable code, and the user input taken from the get parameter, which is cmd, is passed directly through this function without any filtering, and attacker could get passed the system commands such as id or uname hyphen minus a in the case of a Unix system. If you replace this shell function with any of the function like execution or pass through or system, the effect would be the same. So let's talk about the example from the DVWA, which is a Metasploit. So under the command execution option in DVWA, we see an online utility that allows you to ping an IP, and the following output is the yielded when you submit an IP address. So we can assume that the backend and one of those function can use to allow user to execute command, since ping is a system command. And let's look at the underlying command for better understanding. Notice that user supplied input is passed through shell underscore executive, this one, and is then echoed back to us without any kind of filtering on what types of input is supplied. So we can try injecting our code by contracting the IP address with the command like an IP address like 192 or any IP address of the machine, and just add ID, then this will give you this. So alternatively, you can use the semicolon before your command and it would still be executed. So this is the command ID. So we can use this command by using and operator, and the output returns are the all three of the command. So uploading shell, since we are able to execute system command, we can use the wget to download and upload a backdoor like we did multiple times when you are able to execute our command like wget space any website in a PHP file, and that will like this PHP file, and that will work. So let's take a look at example 3. So this is the medium level of DVWA for remote command execution. So they have implemented a backlist and prevented the use of colon and. However, the backlist is not sufficient enough. So we can still use the OR operator instead of an AND operator to execute the commands. So let's look at example 4. So this command execution example is from metilde. So in metilde we have an option for performing a NS lookup on a website, and this is how a standard output is like when you query an IP address. Since NS lookup is a system command, there has to be a function that would execute system command. So let's look at the vulnerable code. So this is the vulnerable code. So if you closely observe the part in here in this line, you would determine that they are using shell function to execute this function, to execute the system command. However, the user supplied input is not checked or validated, so as a result, which an attacker can execute the system commands. Direct static code injection vulnerability fails in the category of or falls in the category of remote command execution attack. It is another type of input validation flaws where a user input is passed and stored in a file on a server without actually being filtered before being processed through the PHP interpreter. To illustrate this, so let's look at this following code. This is the vulnerable code. The script is basically used to log every failed attempt along with a timestamp of a file, which is then included in the log viewer PHP application. However, the problem is that no filtering is being performed upon the type of input that an attacker can inject the post into the post variable user. This may also cause a cross-site in scripting vulnerability. However, this script has a bigger problem than XSS vulnerability. That is, an attacker can inject a PHP code, then as soon as the administrator views the logs, the code would be executed. Now that we have seen how the attack works, let's see how to does it in practice. I already done it, so let's just describe how it is done. So this demonstrates a login form that takes a input from the user and then logs the username into the log file. So the log file is publicly accessible in our case due to the absence of proper permission. However, in case where we are not able to view the output of the logs, we can still inject our PHP code. So in case where we are not able to find the log files, we can still perform an XSS attack if the input is not being filtered. And as soon as the administrator views the logs, our JavaScript would be triggered. Since in our case we are able to view the output, let's try injecting the following PHP code and see how we can execute. The following PHP code will be like just a simple PHP space PHP info, then just press enter and it will, or just follow this is the simple PHP command. So as soon as we visit the logs, the PHP code would be executed and it would bring us the PHP info function, which contains a bunch of information about a current version that was installed. As you can see, PHP version is 5.3.2, which is very old. So once we know that our PHP code is executed, we can inject a one-liner spell to execute command. So once we inject the command, we should have a PHP code executed. As soon as we bring the file, we can execute the system command by using the cmd parameter. Remote file inclusion is an attack that targets the vulnerabilities in a web application that dynamically reference the external scripts. The perpetrator goal is to exploit the referencing function in an application to upload malware like backdoor shells from a remote URL within a different domain. The consequences of a successful RFI attack includes like information theft, compromised server, and a site takeover that allows for content modification. So there are two types of file inclusion vulnerability. One is local file inclusion vulnerability, and another that we are talking in here is remote file inclusion vulnerability. The difference between two is that the similar to RFI, the local file inclusion is a vector that involves uploading malicious file to a server via the web browser. So in both cases, a successful attack results in a malware being uploaded to the targeted server. However, unlike remote file inclusion, the local file inclusion assaults aim to exploit the insecure local file upload function that fail to validate the user supplied or control the input. So in order to demonstrate the technique, we will be using a DVWA, which is the damn vulnerable web application within the Metasploitable. So just download the Metasploitable and connect the Metasploitable from your browser and click on the DVWA link. The credential of the login DVWA is username is admin and password is password. So once we are authenticated, just click on this left bar on DVWA security, tap on the left panel and set the security level as low and click just submit, and then select the file inclusion vulnerability right here. So on the file inclusion page, you click on the source button as we all do on our Chrome or Windows page. Just right click on your mouse and click the source button on the bottom right, and if your security setting is successfully set to low, you should see something like this, the page we wish to display. This is the code. This piece of code itself is not actually vulnerable. So where the vulnerability is, as you have many questions. So for a regular attacker who does not already have root access to the machine, this code could be where their investigation ends. The $get variable is interesting enough that they would begin testing for scanning the file inclusion. Since we already have root access to the machine, so let's try harder and see if we can find out where the vulnerability comes from. So we can use cat to view the index.php or just go to the directory where the DVWA is state, which is like var directory. So on this directory, just look for this output and we can see, just type this. So which takes the security setting as input and breaks depending on the setting is applied. Since we have selected low as security, the code proceeds to call the low.php, and if we look further, then we will be going to be like index.php, and this will say that this, and there we have it. We have found the location of the vulnerability, and this code is vulnerable because there is no sanitization of the user supplied input, because the $file variable is not being sanitized before being called by the include function, this function. If the web server has access to the requested file, any PHP code contained inside will be executed, and any non-PHP code will be the file that will be displayed in the user browser. Now that we understand how a file inclusion vulnerability can occur, we will explore the vulnerability on those include.php page. So, but first, in the term of remote file inclusion, other than the local file inclusion which doesn't have an extra steps, but in remote file inclusion it requires some initial setup. So we'll take this opportunity and develop some Linux command line with PHP skill. So in order for an remote file inclusion to be successful, two functions in PHP configuration file need to be set: allow, which is the allow URL fopen, and allow URL include. Both need to be turned on from the PHP documentation. So as you can see, we can see what the configuration do. So allow URL, so allow URL fopen. So this option enables so this option enables the URL aware fopen wrapper that enable the accessing URL object like files. So default wrappers are provided for the access of remote file using the FTP or HTTP protocol. Some extension like zlib may register additional wrapper and allow URL include. This allows the use of URL aware fopen wrapper with the function called include or include once, require or require once. To find DVWA's configuration file, just click on the PHP info tab on your left panel, and this scan will give you a large amount of useful information, as you can see in here, including the PHP version, the operating system of the victim, and of course the configuration file. And this is the loaded file is this one. So now we will using the Metasploit. So in Metasploit, just open the file, open this file using the nano. So just type easy sudo nano, and this is the ini.php file, as you can see, and the sudo password is msf admin. This is the password for Metasploitable machine. So in nano, just type Ctrl W to find the string and type in, just allow URL to hit the enter. So make sure that you allow the URL fopen and allow URL include to both set to be turned on, and just simply save on the file and exit, and then you have to just restart the Metasploitable web server. Then in Kali Linux machine, we need to set up our web server for testing. First, create a test file called RFI test PHP to start the Apache server. Simply just Apache restart, and then after that we will use this RFI test PHP create, and then after that we will start our Apache server. Now that we can test our RFI, so this is the IP address, or this is the link. So if you just visit this link, you will go to these pages, as you can see. From the output that display on the top of the browser, that we can see the page is indeed vulnerable to RFI. To finish with this RFI, you just go there and use all of those vulnerability that you want, or you can look for a PHP include function from the Metasploit page that you want. So that's how you use or know the remote file inclusion vulnerability using Metasploitable web server.
Hello everyone, let's talk about Metasploit. So what is Metasploit, or how it works, how to scan for vulnerabilities with Metasploit. I just make a overview and make a tutorial about it. Just watch the video carefully. Hope you guys find more information and useful tool about this. So a vulnerability is a security defect in a system that can be used to obtain illegal access to sensitive information or inject malicious code. Metasploit, just like all the other security systems, comes with a vulnerability scanner. In its professional edition, Metasploit is a valuable tool that could be used not just for exploitation but also for penetration testing and intrusion detection. The Metasploit framework has become a penetration testing tool that may be used to exploit and evaluate security flaws. It includes the essential infrastructure, information, and techniques for penetration testing and a comprehensive security assessment. When used correctly, this is a fantastic tool for a pen tester, although it is not without flaws. Vulnerability scanning is notable for its high rate of false positives and negatives. It is probably one of the best exploitation frameworks, and it is upgraded regularly with new exploits. So, port scanners is a feature of Metasploit, and Metasploit has a couple of useful port scanners. To view a full list of scanners, we can just type search and then port scan from our Metasploit console, and it will display the list. Like searching loaded modules for pattern port scan, just search port scan and you guys find all the scanners. Metasploit interface and its modules. Metasploit is the most commonly used pen testing tool that comes pre-installed in Kali Linux. The main components of Metasploit are MSF console and the modules it offers. So what is MSF console? MSF console is the most commonly used shell-like all-in-one interface that allows you to access all the features of Metasploit. It has Linux like command line support, as it offers command auto completion, tabbing and other bash shortcuts. It's the main interface that will allow you to work with Metasploit modules for scanning and launching an attack. So how to use Metasploit's interface MSF console? To begin using the Metasploit interface, first open the Kali Linux terminal and type MSF console, and by default MSF console opens up with a banner. To remove that and start the interface in quit mode, use the MSF console and give the command with -q flag. Metasploit modules. Metasploit has small code snippets that enable its main functionality. However, before explaining the modules, you must be clear about the following recurring concepts like vulnerability, exploit and payload. First, vulnerability. It is a flaw in the design or code of the target that makes it vulnerable to exploitation, leading to the disclosure of confidential information. And exploit, a code that exploits the found vulnerability. And payload, it's a code that helps you achieve the goal of exploiting a vulnerability. It runs inside the target system to access the target data, like maintaining access, metafrater or a reverse shell. There are also some Metasploit modules, main modules. Now moving towards the 5 main modules of Metasploit. First one, auxiliary. The auxiliary module contains a set of programs such as fuzzers, scanners, and skill injection tools to gather information and get a deeper understanding of the target system. Then encoders encrypt the payload's exploits to protect them against signature-based antivirus solutions, as payloads or exploits contain null or bad characters. There are high chances for them to be detected by an antivirus solution. And exploit, as discussed earlier, an exploit is a code that leverages the target vulnerabilities to ensure system access payloads. And payloads, as mentioned before, payloads help you achieve the desired goal of attacking the target system. That means they will either help you get an interactive shell or help you maintain a backdoor, run a command, or load malware. And port, the post exploitation module, will help you gather further information about the system. For instance, it can help you dump the password hashes and look for user credentials for lateral movement of privilege escalation. This is 5 main modules of Metasploit. And here is some Metasploit basic commands. Now we'll take a look of some of the basic important commands that we can use to navigate through Metasploit. We will learn more when we get to practical matter. Help, this will display all the core commands. ms fup ms update, this will automatically download any latest update including latest exploits, payloads, or many more. It is one of the first commands I run whenever I start Metasploit. Show exploits, this command would load all the exploits that are currently available in the Metasploit framework. Then show payloads, this command will load up all the payloads that are currently available in the Metasploit framework. Speaking of payloads, in Metasploit generally you would use the following 2 payloads. Then bind shell, when you initiated a connection to the victim. Reverse shell, this is very helpful when our victim is behind a NAT and we cannot connect to him directly. Then show auxiliary, you might be familiar with auxiliary modules as we have already used them. The auxiliary modules contain fingerprinting and enumeration tools, brute forcing tools, and various types of scanners. Then show post, this would display all the modules we can use after we have compromised a target. We will talk a lot about them in previous tutorial. So this is the basic commands of Metasploit. Metasploit browser auto PWN. Nowadays, due to feral restrictions and patch management policies, exploitation of system has become much more difficult. However, one of the most efficient way is to use client-side attacks. Client-side attacks requires to user interaction, and most of the cases can be used through social engineering engagements. An employee who will not have the necessary knowledge to understand the risks of opening untrusted links can help an attacker to exploit any internal systems. Also, the fact that browsers are not patched as often as operating system makes the problem bigger. And browser auto PWN, in order to use this attack, we have to open the Metasploit framework and to use the browser auto PWN module .in the text image. You can see available options. Here is the name, localhost, port. We'll set up the localhost with our IP address and SRV port with the port 80. and URI path with /e in order to prevent Metasploit to set up randoms URL. And after the execution of the module, you will notice that different exploits for a variety of browsers will start loading to our web server. And you can share the link. So guys, that's it for now. Hope you guys liked it, and thanks for watching. Hello everyone, let's talk about code execution and a tool named Armitage, Armitage, and launching Armitage. If you are using Backtrack 5, Armitage would be installed in it by default. However, if you are on the older versions of Backtrack, you can execute apt-get install Armitage from shell to install it, and the Armitage present in Backtrack 5 in somewhat buggy. Therefore, I have upgraded to Backtrack 5 R3, which is the latest version of Backtrack, in order to use Armitage. And to start Armitage, you just need to execute the Armitage command from your shell. Armitage uses example, and Teams server uses example. Look at this picture. How to generating certificate and key store for SSL, starting RPC daemon, MS gRPC starting, start dashboard, and start Teams server on the external IP 192.168.1.202 and set the server password S3CR3T. Host, port, user and password, and this is the details to connect your clients. Host 192.168.1.202, port 55553, user name MSF and password S3CR3T. Packages and binaries for Armitage. Armitage is a scriptable red team collaboration tool for Metasploit that visualizes targets, recommends exploits, and exposes the advanced exploitation features in the framework. So, a target, every attacker needs a target since you are just starting out. I recommend that you set up a target virtual machine made for learning the Metasploit framework. If you need such a target virtual machine, look no further than Metasploitable 2, and it is a virtual machine maintained by the Metasploit project team. It's an Ubuntu server with a lot of services and vulnerabilities. Set this virtual machine. Make sure you set the networking for this virtual machine to NAT or host only. You do not want to expose this virtual machine to the internet. To learn its IP address, log in as user msfadmin, password msfadmin. When this virtual machine starts up, type if config to see the network configuration for this virtual machine. Once you have an IP address for this system, you are now ready to attack it. Now go RTFM, and the Metasploit framework has a lot of jargon, and Armitage has a lot of conventions associated with it. Now that you are up and running, I recommend that you take a few minutes and read the Armitage manual. You can skip the getting started portion if you like. Pay special attention to section 1.4, which details some of the Metasploit framework. Armitage Labs. I spend a lot of time teaching folks how to use Armitage and its big brother Cobalt Strike. To start out right, I have my students go through several labs designed to help them. Like Metasploit framework can do how it's organized. Scan. First go to hosts, nmap scan, intense scan all TCP ports. Then type the IP address of the Metasploitable virtual machine. Wait for the scan to complete. It will take some time also. And right click the Metasploitable host and select services. Then exploit. Go to attacks, find attacks, wait for attack analysis, complete dialog. Right click the Metasploitable host and try various items from the attack menu until one works. Sometimes something is bound to work. Right click the Metasploitable host and select shell 1. Interact. If you have a Metasploiter 1 menu, the keep searching. Metasploiter is a great post exploitation tool, but you are not ready to talk about it yet. And last, type whammy and press enter in the new shell 1 tab. Brute force VNC. Select the Metasploitable host in the target area. Navigate to auxiliary scanner VNC, then VNC login in the module browser. Double click this module and simply press launch for brute force VNC. DB auto PWN. By running a port scan with DB_nmap, we found that ports 135, 139 and 445 are open. The reason we would use db_nmap command instead of simply nmap is because it will automatically save the hosts and associated information in the database. Like, therefore, we would use the "-p" command to try all the exploits based upon the open ports 135, 139 and 1445. Last but not least, we use the command to execute the Metasploit auto pwn, and the command is db underscore auto pwn minus p minus e. In case if Metasploit's auto pwn has successfully managed to compromise the target, a session would be created. As you see in this picture, we can use the sessions minus L command to display all the active sessions. Nessus and auto pwn. We have already discussed the different formats of Nessus reports in the vulnerability assessment. If you would like to use db underscore auto pwn to fire up exploits based upon vulnerabilities, what you need to do is save the Nessus report in the Nessus format and use the db underscore import command to import the Nessus file. Example, db underscore import root desktop report.nessus. Once imported, you can run the command to attack based upon a vulnerability like db underscore auto pwn minus x minus p. And I discussed already about Armitage, and it is the best GUI for Metasploit, and it's frequently updated. Unlike MSF GUI, the purpose of developing Armitage was first of all to create a user interface for attack management that utilizes Metasploit. The second reason was to reduce the complexity of post-exploration attacks such as pivoting, which is used to attack a second host on the internal network by using an already compromised host on that network. Since we are not able to reach that host directly, it has other great features such as importing scans from various enumeration vulnerability assessment tools. Hello everyone, let's talk about first DVWA. So what is DVWA? Damn, vulnerable web application is DVWA. How to install DVWA on Kali Linux, and some prerequisites or requirements of DVWA: install Apache environments and install MySQL environments. So in Linux terminal, make first rooted, give command cd var slash www.html. Now need some comment for HTTPs in GitHub. Just go to GitHub and copy the command and paste in terminal, and the command is sudo git clone. Now location, git clone location GitHub. After this, click ls command. After ls give command mv dvwa, then again ls command, and you find index.html, debian.html. Now after this you guys just type sudo chmod -r777 DVWA, then again ls. Just clear all the thing. Give command cd DVWA, cd config for config.inc.php. Now you guys find some PHP. One more thing, if you are having problems connecting to the MySQL database and all the variables below are correct, try changing the database server variable from localhost and fixes the problem due to sockets. You guys can also connect database by giving command service mysql restart and the server apache 2 restart, then all of them get a restart. So this is for it. Now let's talk about, guys, HTTP. So what is HTTP? HTTP is a protocol or a definite set of rules for accessing resources on the web. Resources could mean anything from HTML files to data from a database, photos, text, and so on. These resources are made available to us via an API, and we make requests to these APIs via the HTTP protocol. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is the mechanism that allows developers to request resources, client-server architecture. In order to understand the HTTP methods, it's important to cover the concept of client server architecture, and this architecture describes how all web applications work and defines the rules for how they communicate. The anatomy of an HTTP request. An HTTP request must have the following: an HTTP method like get, a host URL like http://api spotify.com, a example website, and endpoint path like a endpoint path. A request can also optionally have body anatomy. HTTP request also have optional body headers, query strings, HTTP version. So there is two method for HTTP. One is post, another one is get. So HTTP post request, we use post to create a new resource. A post request requires a body in which you define the data of the entity to be created. A successful post request would be a 200 response code. In our weather app, we could use a post method to add weather data about a new city. Another one is HTTP GET request. We use GET to read or retrieve a resource. A successful GET returns a response containing the information you requested. And how to make a GET request. To make a GET request to retrieve all of a specific user's guests, we can use the following method and endpoint: get users username guests. The documentation tells us the parameters that we can pass in to make this request. We use that in the path we have to pass in a string with the target user's username. We also see that we have to pass in a header called accept and set it to application vnd.github.v3 plus json. And there is a DVWA and HTTP vulnerability. DVA help to HTTP's vulnerability. DVA can. So this is it, guys. In this tutorial I told you guys about the HTTP and its two requests and DVWA for vulnerabilities, web vulnerabilities. So this is it, guys. Hope you guys liked it and thanks for watching.
So in this lecture, I'm going to demonstrate how we can hack a website and then upload vulnerabilities. So there are the simplest type of vulnerabilities, like pictures or files, because they allow us to upload any types of file. So for example, if a target computer can understand PHP, then we can upload any PHP file or PHP shell and get full control of our target computer. Now if the target gets like call computer or the target server understand Python or any other language, then you can upload Python code, Python shell and Ruby shell. Then you can create shells using real evasion or Metasploit, or you can use your own PHP or Python shell. So what we are going to do now is we are going to have a look at tool called Weebly. So I already work on this. So we're going to work on Weebly, which is pre-built in Kali Linux, so you don't have to do any installation process. So Weebly is pre-built on most of the Linux distributor and also on Kali Linux. So first of all, I have DVWA in here, and usually when you are trying to penetrate test on your website, what I recommend this before trying to do any of this is you go all of those pages to check or pages works or not, just to feel of the website to see what install on it and all that, to try to exploit any feature that you want to see. So for example, let's say we want on everything that, and you reach to this upload page, and this upload page will allow us to upload a file. Now this sometimes, and in your penetration testing task, it could be a website that allow you to upload a profile, like profile picture or a picture. So if it's a classified website, maybe it's allowing you to upload pictures of cars or whatever, so you're trying to add into the website. So as you can see, this website expect you to choose an image or file. So let's see if we can upload an image in here. So let's browse desktop, let's upload this. As you can see, this upload is successful and it started in this particular location. So if we just, let's open this in another page and visit this specific, so you have to paste in here and then paste jpg. As you can see, it uploaded the file that we downloaded as in our computer. So it got successful. So as you saw, the picture was uploaded and that's all good. Now what we want to do now is we want to upload an PHP file. So and to do that, we are going to use a call Weebly. This is the tool, and I need to create a payload or a shell. So if you go terminal and generate a Weebly, so let's just type Weebly space generate, because we want to generate a payload or a shell. Then we will put a password, and my password is 123456, because this password is the for password that will be for the file that we can or us can access it and control the website when we upload it to the website. So my password is this 123456, and then we want to locate this file into this directory, and we will name this as shell.php. So after that, as you can see, it generated a shell.php in this root directory. So I list all those directory. As you can see, shell.php is in here. Then after that, we just upload, let's upload shell.php. As you can see, upload successful. So let's visit this page to see if it's really uploaded or not. So as you can see, it just created. So if you see blank page, then PHP is already uploaded. Otherwise you will see that file is not found or file error. So if you see blank place like that, so it successfully uploaded this PHP file. So now what you have to do is you have to go to you have to copy this link, which is your Metasploitable machine's IP address or server. Then you just type Weebly, paste those that you copied, and paste the password that you put in your file. So as you can see, it created Weebly. Now we are going to interact with it, so and Weebly to connect it. So I am already connected. It's a simple process. As you can see, session is now open. So what I did, I just command pwd to see that I am invited to this www .hackable.upload, and if I do id, then I'll see that I use my username or www data, and if you do a uname -a, then if you see that this is the Linux Metasploitable that I am running. As you can see, this is our Metasploitable machine that is running. Now you can do anything you want in this file. You can navigate, you can list all of those files. As you can see, all of those files that we uploaded, card.jpg, email.png, shell.php that we uploaded, all are in here. And then if you just type help, you can do a number of lots of things. See, as you can see, you can do all of the cool stuff you can do with Weebly. So you can try to escalate your privilege, then that will escalate the SQL queries and lot of cool stuff that is just designed for web application or penetration testing. For now, as you can see, you can do lots of stuff. Shell, you can file, remove file, you can download URL, upload file automatically, change current work directory. So you can list or TCP port scan, all of those now in here. So now I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to show you. So, and just to show you that how to use a file or an image into an upload vulnerability on a website.